Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the speakers that have come before me. Australians expect us as the opposition to hold the government to account, and often that means in motions like this we come up here and fire back, but I won't be doing that today. There are times when we have to acknowledge when things were wrong on our side, and there are lessons to be learnt. And there's a few reasons for that. One is it's not honest to do otherwise. Opposition is a time to reflect on how you can do better if you're given the honour, your party, of being in government again. And people won't listen to you when you actually have valid criticisms if you don't look within. We all come to this place with our experiences. I was a barrister for 12 years before this. In the early days of the scheme, someone I know well came to me and said, my daughter is distraught. She's got this letter and I don't know what to do. And I looked at it and I offered to do it and help her pro bono, which means you don't charge. And the more I looked into this, I realised something was going wrong quite early in this scheme. And then I had heard of others that were in a similar position. And what struck me quite early on with that one example was the unfairness of it and how it was not competent. And as someone who's a Liberal and believes in the sanctity of the individual and due process and the presumption of innocence, it offended all of those. It was illiberal, it reversed the onus, and it hurt people. And it hurt people on a large scale. We now know, I didn't know at the time, but we now know close to 500,000 people were affected. I saw one number of 470,000. And the scale did warrant a Royal Commission. It was warranted, and that process is something we should review carefully. It is a 900-page report with many recommendations. Now, we have an onus here, and whether if you're in the executive or you're in the parliament like we are, to not just blindly follow every recommendation, despite the distinguished qualifications of commissioners. They're still people too, and it's an administrative inquiry. So we must do a proper reflection upon all of the recommendations. We must also, going forward, recognise that we still have a duty to having a strong and sustainable safety net. I'm proud of Australia's safety net, and the member who spoke before me is right. Any of us may find ourselves in the position where we rely on it. And even if you don't rely on it, I like to know that it's there for my fellow Australians when they need it. And that system should be one that is compassionate. It should still incentivise work for those who can and work is available. It must be affordable and sustainable. We have that duty to those who pay taxes, but also to the impact that excessive spending will have on inflation that affects everyone. But when you look at this particular scheme, in trying to achieve some of those objectives, it overreached and it wasn't properly scrutinised. And in all levels of government, we should be conscious of the feedback loops when we hear that something has gone wrong, or if someone does a draft legal advice that says something might be illegal. That should be properly considered and passed up and down the chain of decision-making. We must never tell decision-makers just what we think they want to know. We should tell them the truth all the time, and that should be timely. Because it seems, from my reading of the Royal Commission and the evidence that came before it, there was a breakdown in that flow of information where honest and frank and timely advice wasn't being properly moved up the decision-making chain and probably wasn't being properly considered as well. This scheme was illiberal, it was unfair, and it was incompetent. We must all learn the lessons from it, and we must do it in a way that's above politics. There's excessive joy by some in this scheme, and we see it in the House every day. I'd ask for us all to reflect on that. I understand why that would occur, but there's lessons to learn about how we have a competent, fair system of welfare in this country, because Australians deserve no less.